some kind of hump or whatever, this signifies the keyway which you can use to lock it onto a shaft so that the wheel can turn.
The buzzword in Rotary circles is visibility. Gambian Rotarians are therefore looking forward to attracting more people to their cause, which is service above self.
You have to give back to your community. That is why Rotary wants people who are successful in different disciplines to come and join Rotary so that they can give back to their communities. That was the intention of the founders. Paul Harris and his colleagues started this because they felt that they were in a community and they had achieved certain things and they want to give back to their own communities.
The President Rotary Club of Fajara, Minyan Job, is credited with spearheading the drive to make the Rotary Clubs of Banjul and Fajara more visible, alongside his collaborators. His efforts, it seems, have not gone unnoticed, especially by the President of the Rotary Club of Banjul, Fatou bin Job.
The Rotary wheel signifies a lot, as has been explained by the Assistant Governor. And one of the most important things for me is the fact that it is there for people to look at and say, Rotary. Let the name Rotary ring in our heads and let people ask, but what is Rotary? Because we need more and more people in the society to join Rotary so that we can put our hands together and give back to the community, as Rotarian Past President Batch just said.
Francis Mendy, Grts.
A significant number of electorate turned up on Sunday despite frantic efforts by the opposition to stop the general elections. Ivorians are turning a new page and hoping to reunite with soldiers who left the country during the infamous political crisis that rocked the country 3 years back. Find out after the break how the interim president of the Central African Republic is investing in peace and security. Welcome back. The Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara is trying to invest in peace and security in an effort to appease exiled soldiers, an ambitious exercise designed for soldiers who fell out with the political system and went into exile have been urged to return to Abidjan. As we hear in this report, the appeal by the President has seen an overwhelming response.
Of former soldiers and policemen from Côte d'Ivoire chose to go into exile after ex-President Laurent Gbagbo fell from power. They came to this courtyard inside the Ministry of Defense to find their names on lists. 3 years after having left Côte d'Ivoire, these men are ready to return home.
We establish a profile for them, we identify them, we register them, and there are a certain number of questions they must answer, such as when did they leave in exile, where have they been and what have they been doing. We want to know what path they've taken.
The identification process is scrupulously followed. Their lives, education and careers are closely examined after they are biometrically registered. Once their background checks are confirmed, they can look forward to a new life back home. A total of 1,439 former soldiers responded to current Ivorian President Ouattara's appeal to them to return home. Those exiled were concerned about what attitude the new Ivorian leader would have towards them. But now, most are optimistic, although a few are still afraid to go back.
I want to use this opportunity to encourage my comrades and those who are still in exile to come home. The President is making good on his promise. I can confirm that everything is fine. There's no need to be afraid. Each person can add his brick to help rebuild Côte d'Ivoire. This is our country. No one can rebuild it but us.
There are around 1,000 former Ivorian soldiers who chose to live in neighboring countries. They face an uncertain future. To entice them back, the Ivorian government has not set a deadline for them to return. So these last exiled Ivorians can have more time to decide whether or not to come back.
The interim president of the Central African Republic, Catherine Samba-Panza, is beginning to settle down on her new job. After several months of deadly violence and political instability, the Central African nation turned a new page recently and made history as well, having for the first time a woman as the country's commander-in-chief. The new president is trying to establish law and order in a country where Muslims and Christians are blaming each other for the unrest.
In spite of the presence of French forces and African MISCA soldiers, a number of districts in Bangui are still living with pillaging and settling of accounts. The anti-Balaka Christian militias are continuing to hunt down former Seleka fighters and anyone else who appears to be Muslim. Drunk with revenge, some are destroying Muslim homes. People in the Muslim districts of the capital are attempting to organize to defend their families.
We are not members of Seleka. We are simply Muslims fighting to save our lives and defend our districts.
The Red Cross estimates that 30 people have been killed and 60 others injured in Bangui in the past several days. Against this background, the new president is trying to establish order. Catherine Samba-Panza called on former police officers to rejoin their units to help rebuild a state of law and provide security and justice. She says she is determined to punish severely all the current looting and killings.
We must put all the people still looting out of commission. We are going to clean up the districts one by one and make them safe.
The constant lack of security is preventing thousands of displaced people from the capital from returning to a normal life.
Without security, how can we go home? We can't. We're in danger and must stay here.
The insufficient number of French and African soldiers have even more trouble pacifying the towns of the provinces. Hundreds of ex-Seleka rebels have fled there from Bangui recently.
The authorities in Thailand have succeeded in holding general elections on Sunday. Despite a highly publicized campaign by the opposition to neutralize the process, Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatра's government has been trying to restore normalcy in the country since November, when popular protests calling for her ouster emerged. Many critics believe the result of the general election may not help end the political logjam in Bangkok.
Protesters disrupted Thailand's general election on Sunday, blocking polling stations across the country. Their leader, Suthep Thaugsuban, urged Thais to boycott the vote.
We will not vote. If attacked, we will go to the army for help.
Most of the closures occurred in the capital, where 488 out of the city's 6,600 polling stations were shut. Protests over government corruption began in early November. Protesters' anger was also fanned by the government's decision to call early legislative elections. In the past weeks, demonstrations have turned violent. Many Thais have had enough.
We should exercise our right to vote. If you want to vote no on the ballot, you can do that as well. I am protecting my rights. I believe that voting is the only peaceful solution to this crisis. Suthep's way is unacceptable.
Despite the unrest, election officials say that 89% of polling stations remained open. Voters are to choose 500 deputies for Parliament. However, even if the party of Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra wins, as is expected, it may not have a functioning government for months to come, as protesters prevented many candidates from registering.
And before we take leave of you, a quick reminder of the day's top stories. Working towards lasting peace in Africa, the Vice President, Dr. Isatunjai Sedi, returns to the country after taking part in the just concluded African Union meeting in Ethiopia. Bracing up for the daunting task of healing the sick and wounded, the newly inducted Gambian doctors have been told to deliver and live up to expectations. Uneasy calm and normalcy is returning to the Central African Republic, but for how long will the country's ragtag army continue supporting interim President Catherine Samba Panza's peace and security overtures. And over 1,000 and still counting Ivorian ex-soldiers are returning in droves after President Alassane Ouattara's highly publicized appeal for ex-combatants to come home and work. That was all in this edition of the news. Thanks for the pleasure of your company. Do stay with us.